very impromptu new episode of Bar-zinga. Without Baltimore Lauren, unfortunately, or special guest Ben Martin, but I'm with very extra special guest
Toledo Tom, and I'm here with
and
we're here in Warren, Michigan, post Great Lakes Comic Con.
That's right.
And we're at the
Jimmy's Tavern,
the back of the Coney Island. And we're going to talk about Saga of the Swamp Thing, the Alan Moore run,
which is a great segue following my London episode with John Tottleman. But first, Tom, what are you drinking?
Southern Comfort, the only thing that you would be drinking down in the bayou.
That's right. And I was drinking a beer earlier tonight called it was called a Horny Monk. It actually was. That was the name of the beer, a Horny Monk. I honestly cannot remember the name of the beer that I'm drinking now, so if you can remember...
It
must be working. If you can tell me what I'm drinking, I'll give you a 9.8 Swamp Thing 50. But it's beer. So, Tom, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, Tom, tell everybody about Alan Moore and John Tottleman and Steve Bissett's Swamp Thing, which you clearly just recently reread and caught up on once again.
Well, it came out in the early to mid 80s, went from about 83 to 87, and I remember reading it. I got into it when I was in high school, and I've read The Anatomy Lesson, which is Alan Moore's first story arc, probably a half dozen times, but this is the first time I've done a comprehensive reread of the entire run. It's been collected by DC in a series of hardcovers called Saga of the Swamp Thing, and there were 6 volumes. I had the trade paperbacks, and according to Steve Bissett and John Tottleman and Rick Veitch, they feel it's probably the definitive representation of their work so far. I'd love to get my hands on an Absolute Edition or one of those sweet IDW artist editions. We don't have that at this time.
Yeah.
But the Saga of the Swamp Thing trade paperbacks, the most recent editions, are the way to go if you're going to read this series.
Yes. I remember personally, Tom, who I've known for 30 years, easy or more, this guy slowly, and it was a course of time, got me turned on to those Swamp Thing issues. And I remember him specifically telling me about Anatomy Lesson. And it took a few years and a few tries before I finally jumped into it. But once I got into it, it really was a game changer. I mean, Alan Moore and Tottleman and Bissett's Swamp Thing run was very much on par with a lot of that great stuff in the 80s that really revolutionized the way people look at comics. Between that, Watchmen, Dark Knight, Jeepers, Mage. What were some of the other great books of the 80s?
American Flag.
Howard Chaykin.
Walt Simonson's run on Thor,
absolutely.
The Hernandez brothers, Love and Rockets.
That's right.
There's a lot of good stuff in the 80s. What strikes me upon the reread of the Alan Moore run is it doesn't seem dated exactly, but it doesn't have the polish of today's modern graphic novels. It wasn't written for a trade paperback. It was a serial comic. It was periodical. It came out once a month, hell or high water.
Right.
And so a lot of deadline pressure, a lot of fill-in artists. I've heard stories anecdotally that Alan Moore turned in like entire strips like over a weekend. It reads incredibly well, incredibly smoothly, given those conditions. Now again, not as polished as say what he's writing today, but eminently rereadable.
It holds up.
And a lot of stuff I've been reading lately, I've kind of forced myself to kind of power through. Not that it's bad, it's good material, stuff that I'm looking forward to, but it's still kind of a struggle. The Swamp Thing's page turner, like literally a page turner. You finish one issue, you read it, and want to jump to the next.
Right.
The entire 4-year run knocked out in a week.
Right.
Well, maybe it took me a couple weeks, but
couple weeks.
Within a couple weeks, I knocked out the entire run. Highly recommend.
So, out of that whole, and it's a huge arc, but I'm going to have to ask, favorite character? in that whole, what would you say, Matt Cable? Would you say Arcane, Matt Holland, Abby? If you have to like, pinpoint, what would be your favorite character? Not their arc, not so much, but just like who would you say, you know, resonates with you the most after all these years?
Tough one. Perhaps Swamp Thing himself. It was kind of a reinvention of the character. So not that what we knew was wrong. Or, I'm sorry, what we did know was wrong.
Right.
But it still played. It took that continuity and incorporated it and it moved it forward.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. And so really, the character is kind of a brand new character in a sense, and it's a complete reinvention of identity. So he spent his entire life, Greek as it was, a Swamp Thing, thinking that he was one thing, which was
A man that thought he was a monster.
yeah, he thought he was Alec Holland, and he had absorbed part of the consciousness of Alec Holland.
Alec Holland.
Comfort's working. Alec Holland, but he was actually entirely something else. He was kind of a new life form.
Right.
So his process of self-discovery, especially like the American Gothic storyline, which was kind of it was a weird story arc in the sense that it coincided with 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which took the 50-year history of DC and totaled it. Crazy crossover, and it restructured everything about the DC universe. And Swamp Thing had the obligatory crossover. Right. But Alan Moore really took those ideas, folded it into the story in a way that felt organic. Didn't really feel like a forced crossover. It was kind of attacking these cosmic themes from a different perspective, and it worked pretty well. It was a cool series. Yeah. So Swamp Thing, to answer your question, is probably my favorite character still. Cool bits. Etrigan, which Steve Bissett was really dying to do. He wanted to do a demon series, which was the old Jack Kirby character from the 70s. Not the Fourth World, but it was slightly after that, but while he was still at DC.
Right.
And they polished that character up a little bit. Creepy cool stuff with Etrigan. Appearances by the Phantom Stranger, an old DC Mysteries mainstay. Spectre.
My favorite.
That was super cool. Like there was this whole Doomsday Armageddon scenario where they have to stop this crow from taking this black pearl that's going to reignite ultimate evil, and I mean super dark Lovecraftian kind of ideal, right? And the Spectre lets this thing go by deliberately just because he's so powerful. He's bored. He wants a challenge. He's like, bring on ultimate evil. Let's see what it can do.
Screw it.
And yeah, so it's just like a lot of the old mainstay Golden Age and Silver Age DC characters. Again, not a reinvention, but they kind of polished them up and showed them in a different perspective, and a lot of cool cameos.
Yeah, and after all, after 30 years, it still holds up. It's still a solid story.
It is very solid. Again, if it was being written today, where again you're writing more for a trade for ultimately a bookstore market, it'd probably be structured a little differently. But each issue, more or less, self-contained story, but plays into these bigger arcs and themes.
Right.
And again, page turner.
Yeah.
The whole run goes by really quick. So many times it kind of shifts gears. You want to stay with it. You just want to find out what happens next. It's very engaging throughout the entire run.
It really is. You know, as far as like even Alan Moore's arc, followed by the stuff that Veitch did with Taliban later on, even the Nancy Collins stuff that did, and then the Mark Millar stuff that followed that. You know, and Mark Millar really kind of turned that whole thing on its ear. But that's a whole other episode. Swamp Thing, Alan Moore, John Taliban, Steve Bissett,
Rick Veitch, Sean McManus.
Here's our giveaway. I want to know the top 5, and this is all Swamp Thing cats. I want the top 5 characters in that arc. I didn't drop that on your head. Oops. The top 5 characters from the Alan Moore, John Taliban arc, and you're going to get a 9.8 Swamp Thing signature series sent to you. Let it roll. Tom, from us to you, buy comics, read comics, slab comics, make great coasters. Adios. I think it was good.
We'll see.
Well, that was almost 10 minutes of